we just referenced America, and 15 million people didn't turn up to vote who voted for Biden because Trump got about the same number, and then 15 million people didn't vote for Harris. They disappeared for whatever reasons. What did you yourself, or what did the Labour Party learn watching that election that you think you'll take to heart for our next election, if anything?
I think Harris fought the campaign on the wrong ground, to be honest. She sort of tried to take Trump on a range of issues that weren't the issues that Americans were really caring about. Election, and there's a sort of old mantra in an election campaign, you have to answer the question that voters are asking. She was answering a whole lot of questions that they weren't asking. And so when you look at the demographics, they lost a lot of Hispanic voters despite Donald Trump's position on immigration. That's got to have alarm bells ringing in the Democrat headquarters about how is it that that Hispanic voters in places like Arizona and New Mexico were voting Trump? How is it that young women across the US were voting for Trump? And so I think you got to know who your voters are, and you got to know what they care about. And talking about a bunch of stuff that there's a lot of women in the States who care a lot about abortion, but didn't vote based on abortion. They voted based on something else. So you've kind of got to be able to differentiate. You've got to be able to decide what are the issues that are going to determine someone's vote, and make sure that you're answering the questions that they've got in that area. I said this to the Labour Party conference in the weekend. We've got to make sure we're talking about the issues that people care about, not just the issues that we think they should care about.
What are those issues, Chippy? What are those issues that people care about at the moment?
Well, I mean, right now, the polls will tell you overwhelmingly clearly, cost of living is still by far the number one issue that people care about. Healthcare has made its way to number two, and pretty convincingly so. And I actually think the one that's really rising up the ranks at the moment, and it's going to rise further and steadily in the next couple of months, is employment. People, people want to know that there are jobs out there. There's all very well the government bashing people with sticks, to get them off benefits. Where are the jobs? And so I think, those are going to be three of the pivotal issues at the next election. And then there's other issues. I mean, on cost of living, you could break that down further and say, okay, food prices have stabilized a bit, but rates are still going up, rents are still going up, power prices are actually going to go up more next year than they did this year, because the Electricity Authority have said that the lines companies and Transpower can hike up their prices. So these are things that are going to whack people in the pocket. Transport costs are likely to still go up. Let's see what happens to the price of, the international crude price. But actually, transport's not going to get cheaper. And so the cost of living crisis is by no means over, despite Nicola Willis basically trying to claim that it is.
Chewie, some questions?
How do you, all of those points are really good. And I agree that those are the big ticket items. How do you balance that with, say, some of the smaller but very emotive issues? We've seen here this government go after Māori, disabled people, just really attack all of those little bits and pieces as part of their we can't afford any of this nice stuff attack. You will have people try and nail you down on how do we deal with Israel? How do we deal with Russia? All of these things, but that's not necessarily going to win you huge votes, but it's going to make a lot of noise. How do you balance those things?
I think you have to know your values, and you've got to stick with your values. I think one of the things that makes people so cynical about politics is where they see politicians ducking and diving away from issues because they think they're not vote winners. You still got to know your values and stick to them. So let's take the Treaty Principles Bill, for example. I'm vehemently opposed to that. I attended the hikoi, and actually the thing that I was really excited about coming out of the back of that was I think David Seymour wanted nothing more than for an angry mob to descend on Parliament, and he didn't get it. He got people saying, actually, this isn't New Zealand. This isn't what we want. We're going to be positive. We're going to talk about a positive future and how we can actually be united as a country.
So I think one arrest, and it was a counter protester.
Exactly. So you can actually demonstrate your values without giving the other side what they want. And so, I think the people who organised the Hikoi, full credit to them, because they basically made a really positive statement about we don't have to allow this to divide us as a country. We can actually come together. So I think that's how you do it. Similarly on Palestine, Israel, we should be clear on what our position as a country, and we should just be consistent about that. Israel's actions in Palestine are illegal. They've been found by the International Criminal Court to be illegal, and New Zealand should stick with its principles and back the International Criminal Court.
Speaking of that, this was a clip that I didn't hear about until I saw the right-wing Twitterverse go mental about it. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon earlier this week asking about would New Zealand arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he came to New Zealand.
The International Criminal Court a couple of weeks ago issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. If either of them came to New Zealand, would we enforce those warrants?
Yes, we support the ICC, and as I've said to you all along, those are matters before the court, but we believe in the international rules-based system, we support the ICC, and we'd be obligated to do so.
Your response to what the Prime Minister said?
Well, for once, you found me agreeing with Christopher Luxon tonight.
Good.
If you want to be part of the international rules-based system, you have to accept the outcome of bodies like the International Criminal Court. I'm quite surprised by that, actually. I'm surprised but encouraged by his answer. I thought it was a good answer.